Perhaps within every human being, there is a quiet space where all the sounds of the world seem to stop. A space between thoughts, where the mind no longer chases the past or fears the future. In that moment, we are no longer the ones searching for truth, but truth itself begins to unfold within us. That is the beginning of awakening, the path that Buddhism calls awakening the mind, the awakening of consciousness. On the Buddha's Wisdom Journey channel, we walk together into the depths of insight, a kind of understanding that is no longer confined by words or concepts. Every teaching, every story, every breath is an invitation for us to return, to face our own mind, where the roots of all suffering lie, and where the door to liberation quietly opens. The Buddha once said, "The mind is the root of all phenomena." When the mind is diluted, the world becomes chaotic, broken, filled with fear and conflict. But when the mind is awakened, everything suddenly becomes clear and pure, like a still lake reflecting the moon. Enlightenment is not a distant destination, but the transformation of every moment in consciousness, from ignorance to understanding, from grasping to letting go, from anger to compassion. But how can a mind full of delusions awaken? How can we stop in a world that constantly urges us to run, to achieve, to be better than others? That is the question Buddhism does not answer with theory, but with inner experience. Awakening the mind does not speak of some distant philosophy. It speaks about you. The one who is breathing, feeling, existing in the stream of life. Every moment, your mind is being pulled by thousands of thoughts, worries, regrets, desires, fears, and it is these very movements that create the world of suffering. The Buddha taught that, to be liberated, we must first see clearly the nature of the mind's workings. Not to control it, but to understand, to realize the truth. That everything is merely a process of arising and passing away, like clouds drifting across the sky, with nothing worth clinging to. On this path, awakening is not a one-time act, but a deep process. Little by little, we learn to observe without judgment, to listen without reacting, to be present without trying to change anything. Gradually, in that stillness, we realize that there is no I that needs to be enlightened, there is only the mind illuminating itself, like a lamp shining into the darkness of ignorance. When we begin to awaken, everything may seem the same, work, family, the outer world remain unchanged, but the way we perceive them transforms. A harsh word no longer makes us angry, a loss no longer brings despair. We see, in every fluctuation of life, a deep stillness, like the solid ground beneath our feet. That stillness is not something we create, but something that has always been within us. Buddhism calls it Buddha nature, the pure, luminous mind that has never been tainted by suffering or delusion. Awakening the mind is not a journey of escaping reality, but an art of living amidst the flow of life while maintaining inner stillness. When we deeply understand the Buddha's teachings, we realize that happiness does not lie in changing the world, but in seeing it with awakened eyes. That mindfulness allows us to walk gently, speak truthfully, live with compassion, and act with wisdom. That is the essence of the Dharma, not to become better in the eyes of others, but to live more truthfully with ourselves. On the Buddha's Wisdom Journey channel, we do not only learn about Buddhism, but learn how to experience it, in every breath, every action, every thought. Each video is a mirror reflecting our own consciousness, allowing us to see more clearly how we are living, whether we are awake or still lost in the endless circle of greed, anger, and ignorance. And then, when we realize this, the journey of awakening the mind begins, gently, naturally, effortlessly, like a lotus blooming in muddy water, yet radiating its pure fragrance. Because awakening is not something we have to achieve, it is the natural state of the mind when it is no longer veiled by ignorance. When the light of wisdom shines within, we do not just understand Buddhism, we become the living embodiment of the Dharma, living with compassion, understanding, and harmony with all beings. That is the spirit that Awakening the Mind, Buddhist Perspectives wishes to bring, a doorway through which we may step into a world of deep understanding and profound peace. Awakening does not come from lofty ideas, nor is it the result of extreme mental effort. It begins with something very simple: awareness. Only when we become aware of the flow of the mind can we see how delusion leads us from one form of suffering to another. The Buddha taught that the human mind is like water. When it is disturbed, we only see its murkiness, but when it becomes still, its natural clarity appears. Most of us live with a disturbed mind, agitated by desire, fear, expectation, or lingering memories. We think we are living, but in truth, we are merely reacting to everything. A single word can make us angry, a loss can drive us to despair, a pleasure can make us cling. In these reactions, we are not truly free. The mind is bound by the very things it chases. And that is why the Buddha called life dukkha, not because life is bad, but because we fail to see its true nature. Awakening, in its deepest sense, is seeing without being swept away. When we can look at a thought without following it, we have begun to awaken. When we can see anger without letting it control our actions, that is a step of mindfulness. When we sit quietly, simply observing the breath going in and out without trying to change anything, we enter the depth of presence, where the mind is no longer dragged away by the illusions of past and future. Buddhism sees the human mind as a garden. If we neglect it, weeds will grow everywhere. But if we know how to plant the seeds of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, that garden will bloom. However, planting seeds, in Buddhism is not an act of force or inner conflict, but of nurturing through understanding and observation. When we see anger clearly, we do not need to suppress it, we only need to understand that anger arises from fear, from hurt, from attachment to the self. And the very moment we understand, that anger begins to dissolve. That is one of the key insights of Buddhism on awakening the mind, not to destroy the mind, but to see it clearly. Not to turn ourselves into a perfect person, but to live with deep understanding of our true nature. It is within that understanding that ignorance dissolves, like morning dew under sunlight. The unawakened often live in two extremes, either clinging to pleasure or avoiding pain. But the awakened one understands that both are illusions. Joy comes and goes, sorrow arises and fades. Every emotion, every thought, is but a wave upon the ocean's surface. When we look deep into the ocean's depth, we see it remains still and clear. Awakening is to live from that ocean depth, not swept away by the waves of emotion and thought. Buddhism does not teach us to reject the world, but to live in the world without being carried away by it. When the mind has awakened, even the smallest acts of daily life, washing dishes, walking, smiling, become meditation. We do not need to climb mountains or leave the world to be enlightened, we only need to be fully present. In each moment. That very presence is the path of freedom. But that path is not easy. For human beings often fear silence, fear facing themselves. In stillness, we encounter the darker corners of our mind, loneliness, insecurity, old wounds not yet healed. And we try to escape them in every possible way, overworking, seeking pleasure, drowning in information, social media, music, or even religion. Yet awakening only begins when we stop, when we have the courage to look directly into what is happening within us, without judgment, without escape. It is in that very moment that something miraculous happens, pain becomes the teacher. We begin to understand that every suffering carries within it the seed of wisdom. Each time we suffer, if we know how to observe, we learn something about ourselves, about the attachments, expectations, and illusions we have lived with for so long. And little by little, we learn to let go. Letting go is not indifference, but understanding deeply enough that holding on is no longer necessary. When the mind no longer resists reality, when we see things as they are, no more, no less, that is awakening. There is no seeker, no goal to reach. There is only life itself, radiant, clear, complete. Buddhism views awakening not as an event, but as an ongoing process. Each moment we remember to return to the breath, we awaken a little more. Each time we recognize that we have been carried away by thoughts, we awaken further. And through the years, that awareness becomes natural, effortless, spontaneous, like sunlight shining everywhere without discrimination. In the depth of awakening, there is no longer a boundary between the self and life. When the mind is bright, the world is bright. When we are compassionate, all beings seem gentle. This seeing is not intellectual knowledge, but wisdom, a knowing that arises from the absolute stillness of the mind. That is where awakening the mind leads us, not to the cleverness of intellect, but to the light of awareness, where we clearly see the impermanent, selfless, and unsatisfactory nature of all things, and then walk through life with a serene and peaceful heart. There is one thing that few people realize: awakening is not a mystical experience, but a return to the most ordinary things, the breath, the footsteps, the light falling through the morning window. In each of those small moments, if we are fully present, the mind naturally becomes clear. But what prevents us is not the external world, but the layers of ignorance that have clouded that awareness through the years. Human beings often live as if asleep in a dream, dreaming of fame, dreaming of love, dreaming of success, and even dreaming of peace. We keep seeking something more, deeper, higher, without realizing that awakening can only occur in this very moment, when we stop seeking. The very act of seeking is itself ignorance, because when we look for something outside ourselves, we have already moved away from the present, away from truth. The Buddha taught that all suffering arises from attachment. Attachment to the self, to opinions, to the desire that life must be as we wish. When we let go of attachment, the mind naturally opens. Letting go does not mean abandoning, but fully accepting. A person who is awakening does not resist anything, nor try to hold on to anything. They live like a river, flowing through every bend without obstruction. In that process, mindfulness is the bridge that carries us from delusion to clarity. Mindfulness is not merely a technique of observing the breath or meditation, it is the full presence of mind in each moment of life. When washing dishes, we know we are washing dishes. When walking, we know we are walking. When sadness arises, we know that sadness is present, without running away, without labeling. That pure knowing is the foundation of awakening. Awakening does not mean the absence of suffering, but the knowing that suffering is present without letting it rule us. When we see sorrow clearly, it no longer imprisons us. When we look into fear with understanding, fear dissolves like smoke. Awakening does not remove the darkness, but illuminates it with the light of awareness. The Buddha once taught, "There is nothing to attain, for all is already present." That simple sentence is the foundation of enlightenment. People think enlightenment is something grand to be achieved through effort. While in truth, enlightenment is the natural state of the mind when it no longer seeks. Like the sun, it always shines, it is only because of the clouds that we think it has disappeared. The clouds are not to be driven away, only allowed to disperse naturally. Awakening is the journey of returning to that clear original mind, neither adding nor subtracting. When the mind releases all desire to possess, all longing to affirm the self, it becomes extraordinarily light. Awakening does not turn us into someone else, but brings us back to who we truly are before the world defined us. In Buddhism, there is a beautiful image, the lotus blooming in the mud. The lotus does not avoid the mud, nor is it stained by it. It grows from it, rises above the water, and blossoms in fragrance. Likewise, an awakened mind does not need to escape life, but lives within it without being pulled by it. When the mind is at peace, the world is at peace. When the mind is bright, everything reflects that brightness. The unawakened live in reaction, always stirred by external conditions. The awakened live in reflection, seeing clearly without being swept away. That difference seems small, yet it marks the boundary between suffering and freedom. A single insult can anger the unawakened, but for one who sees the nature of words, merely sounds arising and passing away, they lose their power. Like the wind passing over a lake, creating ripples but not changing the nature of the clear water beneath. Awakening is the vision that penetrates illusion. When we look at a flower, we see not only its color and fragrance, but also the soil, the water, the sunlight, and the gardener's hands. When we look into a drop of water, we see the entire ocean. When we look into suffering, we see the seed of understanding. Such vision is no longer limited by duality, no right or wrong, good or bad, but is a total seeing, where everything unfolds in the natural order of cause and condition. Awakening is not reserved for monks or sages. It can blossom within our busy daily lives, when we smile at a stranger, when we feel gratitude for a new day, or when we sit still amidst the traffic and feel our heartbeat quietly steady. Each small act is a doorway to deep awareness. And the miracle is, when the mind begins to awaken, the world also changes. Not because the world itself changes, but because our way of seeing does. The things that once made us anxious suddenly become light, the conflicts that once hurt us now reveal themselves as lessons for understanding. We begin to feel the connection between ourselves and everything, the grass, the people, the birds, and even the suffering of others. From that, compassion arises. Compassion is not pity or self-sacrifice, but a deep understanding that all beings suffer and are walking the same path of awakening as we are. When the mind is filled with understanding, love flows naturally, not from duty, but from the realization that the suffering of others is also our own. When compassion and wisdom walk together, we move gently through life. There is no longer a need to prove anything, nor to claim what is right. Everything becomes simple and pure. We live without being pulled by the past or the future. We simply exist, wholly, deeply, and naturally. That is when awakening the mind is no longer a concept, but the breath of life itself. Every day, every moment is an opportunity to awaken, when we hurt, when we rejoice, when we are silent, when we smile. For awakening exists nowhere else but in this very moment, where mind and life meet in perfect stillness. There is an interesting thing in the process of awakening the mind. We do not truly awaken through effort or willpower. The mind cannot be forced to awaken. It only awakens when it itself recognizes its own delusion. In Buddhism, that is the moment when wisdom arises, like a lamp being lit in the darkness, not by anyone's hand, but because the darkness itself has dissolved. The human mind, accustomed to chasing the echoes of the world, believes that understanding is the accumulation of information, that enlightenment is a kind of achievement. But the understanding the Buddha taught does not come from intellect, it comes from the silence of awareness. When the mind becomes still, when we stop identifying ourselves with each stream of thought, pure seeing appears. And in that seeing, there is no longer a one who sees, nor a thing being seen, there is only knowing itself, complete, clear, and boundless. Enlightenment, therefore, is not an adding on, but a taking away. Less illusion, less attachment to self, less craving, less running away. Each time we stop trying to become someone, the mind begins to return to itself, silent, empty, yet whole. The weary I within us gradually fades, giving space to a pure presence. From there, every action, every word, every thought becomes natural, effortless, unforced by ego. That is what the Buddha called right mindfulness, not merely remembering to breathe or to observe, but living with full awareness, free from clinging and judgment. When mindfulness is present, suffering cannot remain, for suffering exists only as long as the mind clings to the self. Awakening, therefore, does not lie in escaping life, but in looking deeply into it. When we suffer, we look deeply into that suffering, not to analyze, but to understand. When we are angry, We look deeply into our anger, not to control, but to see its roots. Everything illuminated by awareness gradually dissolves, like mist before the morning sun. And then we realize that all suffering, all fear, all afflictions, arise from the illusion of self. It is this very I that creates the boundary between me and others, between gain and loss, between right and wrong. When that boundary dissolves, the world is no longer a fearful place. It returns to being the natural flow of life, where all things depend on each other and move together. In the vision of the awakened, there is nothing that needs to be changed, for everything is already complete in its essence. But that does not make them indifferent. On the contrary, they live with profound compassion. Because they see clearly that all beings are lost in the same dream of suffering. And because they understand, they love. Because they see, they do not judge. Because they are awake, they act without attachment to results. One who has begun to awaken is no longer carried away by waves of fleeting emotion. They no longer seek happiness in outer conditions, for they have seen that all emotions are passing clouds, and only the sky of the mind is unchanging. They no longer fear loss, for they understand that nothing truly belongs to me. They no longer crave eternity, for they see that eternity is already present in this very moment. Just like a person who is dreaming, when they begin to suspect that they are dreaming, that is the moment they are about to awaken. The human mind is the same. When we begin to recognize the impermanence of all emotions, thoughts, fame, and gain, that is when right view begins to sprout. And when we no longer fear the emptiness of all things, that is when we step through the gate of non-self. In awakening, there is nothing to gain, but nothing to lose either. Life and death are only two small waves upon the vast ocean of the mind. When we see this clearly, we live more lightly, more lovingly, more understandingly. We no longer seek the light outside, for we realize that the light has always been within us since the beginningless past. Each breath, each step, each glance can become a gateway to awareness. When we wash dishes, when we listen to birds singing, when we silently watch the clouds drift, all are opportunities to awaken from the long dream of ignorance. Awakening requires no special place, ritual, or doctrine. It requires only one thing: full presence. And in each moment of such presence, we touch the Buddha nature within ourselves, not distant, not mysterious, not anywhere else but in this very breath, in this very thought, in this smile, and even in these tears. Like the moon shining upon the lake, the awakened mind illuminates all that is. It does not need to fix life, it only needs to shine upon it. And when that light is full, darkness retreats on its own. When we truly see, we no longer ask how to attain enlightenment, for in that seeing itself, enlightenment has already arrived. There is a moment that everyone walking the path of awakening will eventually touch, the moment when we stop seeking a place to arrive, something to become, or a result to hold on to. The mind comes to rest, no longer chasing the forms of the world. And in that stillness, we realize, all the answers have always been here. The Buddha once said, within the mind of every being lies the seed of enlightenment. This means we do not need to search for the Buddha somewhere far away, because the Buddha is none other than our own luminous mind. Awakening is not about becoming someone else, but about returning to the original knowing, pure, free, and untouched by greed, anger, and ignorance. When the mind turns back to itself, the world is no longer a place to fight or to flee. What once caused us suffering is now seen merely as waves of perception, rising and falling within the great ocean. We are no longer the ones being drowned by emotions, but the ones who see the waves. And that is freedom. True freedom does not come from having more or less, winning or losing, gaining or missing. It comes from letting go of the self, the one who always wants to control, to possess, to prove, and to fear. When we let go, everything becomes light. When we stop resisting the flow of life, we begin to move with it in peace. Awakening is not a beautiful idea, but a way of living. A way of seeing the world with an open heart. A capacity to listen to others without rushing to judge. A quiet trust that even as life changes, the mind can remain clear and steady. An awakened person does not avoid pain but embraces it with wisdom and compassion. They understand that suffering is not the obstacle but the path itself. It is from that very darkness that the light of understanding is born. Like the lotus blooming from mud, the enlightened heart arises from the wounds it has carried. Once we truly understand this, our hearts naturally soften. We no longer need to win over anyone, to be better than anyone, or to be recognized. The mind becomes still like a lake, reflecting all things yet holding on to nothing. In that stillness, happiness becomes a natural state, not something to pursue. Life will continue to turn, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, meeting and parting, but those who have awakened are no longer swept away by these changes. They watch the shifting world like clouds, drifting by, like the sound of wind passing through trees. They understand that the nature of all things is impermanence, and within that impermanence, we learn to love more completely. Awakening does not make us cold or detached, it makes us warmer toward life. We begin to see that every being around us, a leaf, a drop of dew, a passing glance, carries the breath of the cosmos. Nothing is small, nothing is insignificant, for all are part of the boundless whole. To live in awareness, we don't need to leave the world, to retreat to a mountain or a hermitage. We only need, in each moment, to return to the breath and the knowing that is present. Just stop, listen, and look deeply, and we will realize that the Buddha is right here in every ordinary moment of life. Awakening does not happen once, it is an endless journey, a journey of returning, of remembering who we truly are. Each day, we may forget and then remember again, get lost and then find our way back. But with even one moment of mindfulness, one deep breath, one clear awareness, the light returns. And that is enough. Like a small candle that can dispel 1,000 years of darkness. A single moment of awareness can dissolve countless delusions. The power of seeing clearly does not lie in its size, but in its purity. A mind that sees itself is a mind no longer bound. And then, in that stillness, we smile, a smile for no reason, directed at no one. A smile of freedom and understanding. Life remains as it is, but the one who sees it has changed. Everything continues. But the heart now abides in a place beyond fear. That is the deepest meaning of awakening the mind, not to become extraordinary, but to live ordinarily with clarity. Not to escape the world, but to see it as it truly is, impermanent, interdependent, and filled with love. If you feel a certain peace while reading or listening to these words, then the seed of awakening has already sprouted within you. Let it be nourished each day by mindfulness, patience, and kindness toward yourself. Every step, every breath, every moment lived in understanding and love, this is the path to enlightenment. And if these reflections touch your heart, please share in the comments what you have felt on your own journey of awakening. Your sincere words might be the light that guides someone who is still lost. Subscribe to Buddha's Wisdom Journey to continue exploring meditations, teachings, and deep insights from Buddhism, pearls of wisdom that can help us live peacefully, understand ourselves more deeply, and love this world more fully every day. For in the end, the path of awakening is not the journey of one person, but of all of us, souls gradually remembering the light within.